What if the life you're longing for does not actually require burning everything down to the ground? What if becoming more you doesn't mean leaving your life behind, but actually stepping more fully into it? That question changed everything for me. And today we are going there. Confession, I have totally burnt some things down in my life. Welcome to the Wild Wisdom Way, a memoir and podcast unfolding in real time as I embark upon the journey of getting real as fuck. As I move through the gritty, raw, and deeply vulnerable acts of writing my memoir, I'm inviting you inside the mess, inside the meaning, and inside those magic moments that cracked me wide open. This podcast speaks to the very human experience of how storytelling becomes a path back to ourselves and each other. Each episode weaves together personal narrative, reflection, and lived insights from the edges of growth. This is about wisdom that reveals itself one wild step at a time. My name is Stephanie. Let's walk together. In this episode, I want to explore the common fear or myth that choosing a more authentic, wild, soul-led path means abandoning your life, your responsibilities, your relationships. And yeah, let's be honest, sometimes we do need to dismantle or flat out destroy old ways of being in order to clear space for a new way of being. Sometimes we need to do that. But overall, this is not about abandoning your life, nor is it about escaping life. It's actually about stepping more fully into your life, becoming more intimate with your desires, your needs, your boundaries, and what feels like a no and what feels like a yes for you. And I'll be honest, the more that I've stepped into my yes and started to honor my no, I've lost relationships along the way. There were people who simply couldn't come along with me for the journey, and that's okay. Not every relationship in our life is meant to last forever. Sometimes we meet for a moment in time, we learn, we grow, we explore together, and then we go our separate ways and we walk our own wild wisdom way. So that's okay. And to walk your wild wisdom way does not necessarily mean tossing everything into the fire. Some things might go into the fire, and some things you might carry forward lovingly. So let's talk about wild wisdom. I was exploring these two words, nerding out a little bit and looking at some definitions. And the words wild and wisdom seem to be contradictory. And here's where it gets interesting. We've been taught that contradictions are bad. We've been taught that you need to choose one or the other. I mean, hello, the society we're living in today is so freaking divisive. Everybody's saying choose a side and fight for that side. And frankly, as I've been walking along this wild wisdom way, what I've witnessed in myself and in the world is that it's not that simple. And in fact, when we can hold the paradox of two polarities, when we can hold that paradox and dance and weave and create within the tension between polarities, that's where we birth new life. I mean, literally, masculine, feminine, new life. So that tension between the polarity is an incredibly powerful space to be. But most of us feel uncomfortable there. We want to choose a side and stay on that side. So let's talk about wild and wisdom. Wild implies untamed. It implies that which is unpredictable, uncontrollable, and frankly, a little bit scary. Most of us don't want to get lost in the wilderness because there's a lot there that we might not be able to manage. On the other side of that, wisdom seems to invoke a feeling of centeredness, of knowing, clear seeing, the ability to take life experience and transmute it, alchemize it into something that is beneficial for all. So we've got the wild over here that's uncontrollable, untamed, it's unpredictable. It's, whoa, we're a little freaked out by the wild, my friends. And then we've got wisdom over here that's like, I see it all. I know. I understand. I understand in the depths of my being. And so these two things can feel rather contradictory, wild and wisdom. But my invitation for all of us here and now is to dare to exist in that creative tension between what seems like two polarities. Can we embrace the wildness, the wilderness within all of us that is unpredictable, untamable? Whoa, we don't know what's going to happen. It's the wilderness, y'all. Can we hold that within us? And can we also hold that wise one within us that through every life experience goes, aha, I know what this is for. I know why this is happening. Here's how we can work with it. Wild wisdom way. The wild wisdom way, my friends, is the integration of wilderness and wisdom. So I just felt like it was important to get that out of the gate first. So with that, a lot of people think that to be wild means to be chaotic, reckless, and irresponsible. Heck, I've had a couple people tell me that I am chaotic, reckless, and irresponsible. I know that my way of being triggers some people. I've had people tell me it triggers them. People have said things like, get a real job. It must be nice to not have to work 9 to 5. Oh, it must be nice to travel the world and do whatever you want. I get these comments a lot, or people feel triggered by how vital and vibrant and happy I am. It's real. It's real, friends. People feel triggered. I've had people tell me like, you're really fucking happy. And that triggers me because I don't even know if that kind of happiness is real. And like, I just see that and I'm like, eh. And so I love this. Triggers to me are a great way of opening up some truth within. When I feel triggered, I might get a little bit like, back the fuck off. But when I sit with it for a moment, I start to look at that trigger. Why do I feel triggered by this? What's coming up for me to look at? And so the wild wisdom way that can feel like it's unpredictable, it's untamed, it's uncontrollable. And for a lot of people, that's triggering because it feels unsafe, because they know safety to be controlled, predictable patterns. Right? Most of our society is built around this controlled, predictable patterns. I mean, look at what humanity constantly tries to do with nature. We try to tame nature and all her beautiful beings. We try to tame, control, and make them fit into our way of being. The wild says, no. No, I'm actually not here to fit within that tamed, controlled box that you want to put me in. The wild says, I'm here to experience the fullness of life. I'm here to step fully into my life. And if I make a little bit of a mess in the process, that's okay. That's necessary. But that's triggering for a lot of people. And that's okay. It's okay that they're triggered because in their own time, they might look at that trigger. And if you're watching this and if you're listening to this and you're feeling really triggered by what I'm saying, let's talk about it. I love having open discussions and conversations about these triggers because there's often something really juicy at the center of it all. All right, so let's talk about how self-abandonment hides within practicality and safety. I'm going to air quote practicality and safety. I come from Canada, and My experience in being a Canadian is that a lot of Canadians, and I was like this too, exist in this false sense of security. Because there's no war on Canadians' doorstep. Actually, at the time of recording this, the US president, dipshit that he is, was actually threatening to take over Canada, a long-standing friendly relationship. Generally, the government's got things taken care of. There's a good safety net, a good social safety net, a good health care for anybody who needs it. And a lot of people in Canada, myself included when I was there, felt really safe. And in that safety, they were willing to self-abandon what felt true for them in order to keep that false sense of safety or practicality and pragmatism. Let me give you a real life example. 7 years ago, as I'm recording this, I left Canada with a backpack, sold most of what I owned, and I was like, I have no fucking clue what's happening, but I'm going out into the world and I'm leaving the safety net. And in that process of leaving the false sense of safety that I had in my life in Canada, I stepped into a massive unknown. And I was not running away from my life nor escaping it. I was actually moving towards a more authentic version of what I wanted to live and be and feel and express in this lifetime. But it meant leaving the safety net. And so for me, that was choosing myself and saying yes to my life in a full way. On the flip side of that, self-abandonment might look like, well, it can't quite be this good anywhere else. I got a good thing going. Things are set up. I feel relatively safe. I'm paying my taxes. I'm head down, nose to the grindstone. Yeah, I don't have much free time. Yeah, I'm not really doing what I love to do, but it feels safe enough. So I'm gonna accept this as my fate. I'm gonna just stay. Not that I'm saying everybody needs to leave Canada. Some people live extremely beautiful and fulfilling lives. I'm using this from my own personal example of what it meant for me to leave my safety zone, leave my comfort zone in order to fully say yes to life. Now, to a lot of people on the outside, that looked like me running away, escaping, abandoning life. I get that. I totally get that perspective. But from the inside, my lived experience of that was not escaping at all, because I actually ran right into all that was waiting to confront me. So unresolved trauma, relational issues, all the things that I had repressed because I was just living that safe, predictable, pragmatic life. And like those feelings didn't really have a space to come up because that's scary and that's raw and like that's a little too wild for this safe, predictable, controlled, pragmatic life. And so when I stepped towards a more authentic version of what I actually was yearning to explore and express and live, it was confronting as fuck. All the things came up. They're still coming up. It's been 7 years. So to say that I escaped or I ran away or abandoned life is what it might look like from the outside. And that's fair to observe that. But I can tell you from my lived experience, that's not what it was. Now, am I saying that everybody needs to pack up their life, leave home, and go live abroad and travel? Not necessarily. No, we all have our own ways of expressing what it feels like to step more fully into our life. For some people, that might be stepping into and saying yes to a relationship, a commitment. Maybe that's where your yes lies. For some people, it might mean finally birthing that creative project that's been in the works, that's been like waiting to come through. It feels edgy, kind of like this does right here, right now. But it's necessary. And it doesn't mean you have to abandon all the other projects you have going on or your other work. You don't have to leave your job even necessarily. You might have to clear a little space and get wise about how you use your energy. But you can say yes without abandoning your life. I think it's important to note that to embark upon your wild wisdom way doesn't necessarily mean leaving the life you have or burning it all down to the ground and starting again. It might look like choosing to embody more depth, presence, and truth inside the life you already have. Maybe it's not time to leave your job, but maybe you can bring a greater presence to that work that feels fulfilling for you. I think a lot of us embark upon a wild wisdom way in search of depth, meaning, truth, presence, authenticity. And these are all things that you can choose to inhabit inside the life you already have. Maybe you don't leave your job and burn that bridge with your employer, but instead, perhaps you see, how can I bring more presence to the work I'm doing? How can I be more honest in how I show up for the work that I'm doing? What would help me to find more meaning and fulfillment in the work I'm doing? Maybe there's a side project, a passion project that needs to come through as well. So it can be a yes and situation. I'll share from my lived experience what it looked like to navigate the wild wisdom way step by step. So I spent about a decade working as a producer, videographer, and editor in corporate and commercial media production, digital media. But it didn't just start there. While I was getting my career off the ground, I was also working night times as a cocktail waitress in a strip club. I feel like that's a whole other episode we'll dive into. But eventually there was a transition point at which the moonlighting cocktail waitressing was taking away from my ability to show up fully in my work as a media producer. And so I let that go. Eventually transitioned into full-time corporate media production. Loved it. That was a great journey for me. And there came a point, a moment in time when I recognized I was just a cog in the propaganda machine. And I no longer felt that that was true for me. However, for the years that I was in that, I was also studying yoga and mindfulness and movement and doing yoga teacher trainings and like really getting myself to a place of deeper wisdom in some practices that really lit me up. Again, there was a tipping point. There was a moment in which I could no longer sustain both, and I transitioned out of the corporate career and into full-time teaching as a yoga teacher, movement mindfulness teacher. And I would pick up a few freelance jobs as well in corporate media production. So it wasn't like let it all go and move on. It was these overlapping, weaving journeys. I didn't just leave Canada right away. I set myself up in my teaching practice and business in Canada. And then eventually it felt like it was time to answer a deeper call. And I left and I moved on. And there were many things that happened along the way to get there. And it wasn't about burning it all down. Yes, I had to say goodbye. And I think that's really important. In fact, there's a way that we can leave our relationships in a good way without burning bridges. Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect, and maybe my ex-husband would testify otherwise, but here's the thing. Saying goodbye and transitioning and moving on and parting ways and going your own way does not always mean destruction and burning things to the ground. It doesn't necessarily mean burning bridges. Occasionally, yes, a bridge gets burned. When I look back at my life, honestly, I can see a few moments in time where I burned some bridges, and it's been a lot of work for me to come into reconciliation with that internally, to release some of the guilt and the shame and to forgive myself and say, okay, Stephanie, in that moment, you did the best you could with the capacity you have. And looking back, you see where you were wrong. Moving forward, you know where you can do better. And where I can do better, and where I think we can all do better, is learning that we can leave all relationships in a good way. So whether it's leaving a work relationship, leaving a partnership, a friendship, leaving a country, we can leave it in a good way, which means there's honesty, there's integrity, there's love, even if there's disagreement. So choosing to walk in your greatest authenticity and to say yes to what feels fully alive in you will mean letting go and saying goodbye and transitioning into other areas, but doesn't mean we have to be destructive about it in the process. Sometimes fire is necessary, my friends. Let's not poo-poo the energy of fire. Sometimes fire is helpful as a catalyst for us to move forward. Sometimes we need that because sometimes we get stubborn, we get stuck, and without that fire, we will never move forward. So sometimes life brings the fire, brings the heat, and all we can do is just move through it the best we fucking can, you know? So let's break it down real simple. What does it mean to fully inhabit your life? To walk your wild wisdom way with the fullest authenticity, the most empowered expression, and the most embodied wisdom possible. What does that actually look like? For me, what I've been tuning into as I've been writing this memoir, there's a common thread. There's generally a moment in every life transition where I stepped into what felt like, I am here for this. I am here for this. I am here for this. And if I can't honestly say I am here for this, then it's time to shift. If I'm just going through the motions on autopilot, following the herd, if I can't truly say I am here for this, then it's time to reevaluate my choices. It's time to reevaluate my path. It's time to move on and say goodbye in a good way. So in your own journey of becoming, I invite you to tune into that statement, I am here for this. Where does that feel like an honest expression in your life? And where are you starting to tune into an actually, I am not here for this? Because it's important that we get clear about what we're not here for. For me, I was not here to be a cog in a propaganda machine. I'm not here for that. For me, I'm not here to be in a marriage that doesn't feel like a full fuck yes. I'm not here for that. I am here for this. Right here, right now, with all of you. Edgy as it may feel, wild as it may feel, a memoir in motion, the wild wisdom way. I am here for this. What are you here for? If you're feeling into taking that tender first step, try my free empowerment ritual. It's online, it's simple, accessible, a 25-minute set of daily practices that can help you to rise and thrive in an empowered way. I'm going to put the link in the description, but you can also comment free ritual and I'll send you the link directly. Thanks so much for walking this wild wisdom way with me. If you're feeling along your own path, that you're walking towards greater authenticity, more empowered expression, and fully embodied wisdom, you're in the right place. And if this feels resonant, please share your love by subscribing, liking, and sharing this channel with your loved ones. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. How's this landing in you? What feels alive for you? What's moving through? Let's talk about it. See you in the next episode. Much love.